The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Windsor Castle, casting long golden rays across the ornate drawing room where Queen Elizabeth II sat with her usual composed dignity. At 96 years old, she had weathered countless storms, both personal and public, yet today felt different somehow. The weight of recent years pressed gently on her shoulders as she adjusted her pearl necklace and smoothed down her lavender cardigan. Her private secretary, Angela Kelly, knocked softly before entering with the morning's correspondence. "Your Majesty, the schedule for today includes the usual briefings, but I wanted to remind you about the special video call arranged for this afternoon." The Queen's eyes, still sharp despite her advanced age, looked up from the papers she had been reviewing. "The video call?" "Yes, ma'am. The one arranged by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Young Archie wanted to wish you something special for your recent birthday, even though it's a bit belated." A flicker of emotion crossed the Queen's usually stoic expression. The relationship with Harry and Meghan had been strained since their departure from royal duties, and the public interviews that followed had created a chasm that seemed impossible to bridge. Yet, hearing about her great-grandson Archie wanting to reach out stirred something deep within her grandmother's heart. The Queen set down her papers and walked slowly to the window, gazing out at the perfectly manicured gardens. The grounds were immaculate as always, but they felt somehow emptier these days. The castle, once filled with the laughter of children during family gatherings, now echoed with a quieter, more formal atmosphere. She remembered the day Archie was born, how her eyes had lit up when she first held him in her arms at Windsor Castle. He had been such a peaceful baby, with Harry's eyes and a serene disposition that reminded her of her own children when they were young. The memory brought a soft smile to her lips, though it was tinged with sadness for all the moments she had missed since then. "What time is the call scheduled, Angela?" the Queen asked, still gazing out the window. 3 o'clock, Your Majesty. I've arranged for it to be set up in the blue drawing room, as it has the best lighting and most comfortable seating arrangement." The Queen nodded slowly. Technology had never been her strongest suit, though she had adapted remarkably well to video calls during the pandemic years. She had conducted numerous virtual engagements, met with world leaders through screens, and even participated in online ceremonies. Yet this call felt more personal, more vulnerable than any official engagement. As the morning progressed, the Queen found herself distracted during her usual meetings. The Archbishop of Canterbury had come to discuss upcoming church matters, but she caught her mind wandering to thoughts of California sunshine and a little boy she barely knew but loved deeply. The irony wasn't lost on her that modern technology, something she had once viewed with skepticism, might now serve as a bridge across the Atlantic divide. Lady Susan Hussey, her long-serving lady-in-waiting, noticed the Queen's distraction during their regular review of upcoming engagements. "Your Majesty seems particularly thoughtful today." The Queen paused, considering her words carefully. Throughout her reign, she had maintained a strict separation between her public duties and private emotions. Yet lately, especially since Philip's passing, she found those boundaries becoming more fluid. "I'm thinking about family, Susan. About how precious those connections are, regardless of distance or complications." Lady Susan, who had served the royal family for decades, understood the weight behind those words. She had witnessed the joy when Archie was born and the sadness that followed when Harry and Meghan chose their new path. The palace had maintained its dignified silence through all the media storms, but everyone close to the Queen knew how deeply the family divisions affected her. Lunch was served in the Queen's private dining room, a more intimate space than the grand staterooms where official meals were held. She ate quietly, her usual appetite somewhat diminished by nervous anticipation. The chef had prepared her favorites, simple fare that reminded her of childhood meals, but even the familiar comfort foods couldn't settle the flutter in her stomach. As 2 o'clock approached, Angela returned to ensure everything was ready for the video call. The technical team had set up the equipment in the blue drawing room, testing the connection multiple times to ensure there would be no interruptions. The Queen changed into a bright blue dress, one that would show well on camera, and added her favorite brooch, a gift from Philip that always brought her comfort during important moments. At precisely 3 o'clock, the Queen sat in the comfortable armchair positioned in front of the large screen. The room had been arranged to look warm and welcoming, with fresh flowers from the castle gardens adding color and life to the formal setting. Angela made final adjustments to the lighting and camera angle, ensuring the Queen would appear at her best.
"Are you ready, Your Majesty?" Angela asked gently.
The Queen took a deep breath, her hands folded neatly in her lap.
"Yes, I believe I am."
The screen flickered to life, and, suddenly, the blue drawing room at Windsor Castle was connected to a sunny living room in Montecito, California. The time difference meant it was morning there, and natural light streamed through large windows, creating a warm and inviting atmosphere. Harry appeared first on the screen, looking older than when she had last seen him in person, but still unmistakably her grandson. His red hair was neatly styled, and he wore a casual button-down shirt that suggested this was an important but relaxed occasion. "Granny," he said, and the Queen felt her heart skip at the familiar nickname. Despite everything that had happened, despite the interviews and the distance, he was still the boy who had once run through these very halls, chasing his brother and getting into harmless mischief. "Hello, Harry," she replied, her voice warm but measured. The months of separation and tension hadn't erased her love for him, but they had created a careful formality that both seemed to recognize and regret.
"How are you feeling?"
"You look wonderful," Harry continued, and she could see genuine concern in his eyes. The Queen realized that despite their differences, he still worried about her well-being, especially given her recent health concerns that had been kept largely private.
"I'm quite well, thank you. California seems to agree with you. You look healthy and happy."
There was a brief moment of silence as both seemed to navigate the careful balance between grandmother and grandson versus the complex dynamics of their changed relationship.
Then, Harry's expression brightened. "Granny, there's someone here who has been very excited to see you."
Archie's been practicing what he wants to say all morning. The Queen's composure wavered slightly at the mention of her great-grandson.
"Oh, how wonderful. Please, bring him in."
Harry turned to call someone off camera, and the Queen could hear Meghan's voice in the background, encouraging and gentle.
"Go ahead, sweetheart. Gon is waiting to see you." Then, like sunshine breaking through clouds, 3-year-old Archie appeared on the screen.
He had grown so much since the Queen had last seen him, transforming from a toddler into a proper little boy with his father's distinctive red hair and expressive eyes. He was wearing a smart little shirt and seemed slightly shy but excited.
"Hi, Gon,"
Archie said, using the special name he had chosen for his great-grandmother. The words were clear and confident, and the Queen felt tears spring to her eyes despite her best efforts to maintain composure.
"Hello, my dear boy," she managed, her voice slightly thick with emotion. "My goodness, how you've grown. You're such a handsome young man."
Archie beamed at the praise, his initial shyness melting away.
"I'm 3 now. I had a birthday with cake and balloons."
"Yes, I heard about your birthday celebration."
"I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you." The Queen's response was heartfelt and honest.
She had missed his 3rd birthday, just as she had missed countless daily moments in his young life. The reality of the physical distance and the emotional barriers that had been erected felt particularly sharp in this moment of connection.
Harry gently encouraged his son. "Archie, remember what you wanted to tell Gon?"
The little boy's face lit up with remembered purpose. He had clearly been coached, but his enthusiasm was entirely genuine.
"Gon, I wanted to say happy birthday to you. Mama and Papa told me it was your birthday and you're the Queen and you live in a castle."
The Queen's careful composure finally cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she listened to her great-grandson's sweet, earnest voice. The innocence in his words, the pure love without any understanding of the complicated adult conflicts that had divided their family, broke through all her royal reserve.
"Thank you so much, Archie. That's the most wonderful birthday greeting I could have asked for."
Her voice was warm and genuine, and, for a moment, all the formality and distance disappeared. She was simply a great-grandmother, overwhelmed with love for this beautiful child who lived so far away but had thought to reach out to her. Archie, encouraged by her obvious pleasure, continued chattering.
"I know how to count to 10 now. Want to hear?"
"Oh yes, please show me," the Queen replied, wiping her tears discreetly but making no attempt to hide her emotion. As Archie began counting, his little fingers helping him keep track, the Queen found herself laughing through her tears. His pronunciation was adorable, and he got confused between 7 and 8, but his determination and pride were infectious. The simple joy of watching her great-grandson accomplish this small milestone filled her heart in a way that no state ceremony or official duty ever could. This was what mattered: family connections, love spanning generations, and the innocent happiness of a child who just wanted to share his achievements with someone he loved. Harry watched this exchange with visible emotion of his own. Seeing his grandmother's tears, witnessing the pure love between her and Archie, seemed to remind him of bonds that transcended all their recent troubles. The Queen he was seeing now wasn't the institution or the symbol of the monarchy, she was simply gone, a great-grandmother who missed her family terribly. Meghan appeared briefly at the edge of the screen, smiling warmly and wiping away tears of her own. Whatever tensions existed between the adults, it was clear that she supported and encouraged Archie's relationship with his great-grandmother. As the call continued, the barriers continued to dissolve. The Queen asked Archie about his favorite toys, his friends, and what he liked to do in California. He told her about the chickens they kept, about going to the beach, and about a book his mama read to him about a queen who lived in a castle. "That sounds like a lovely book, Archie. Perhaps the queen in your book is a bit like me." "Are you really a queen, Gone?" Archie asked with the directness that only young children possess. The Queen laughed, a sound of pure joy that echoed through the blue drawing room. "Yes, darling, I really am a queen. But, more importantly, I'm your Gone, and I love you very much." The conversation flowed naturally for nearly an hour, longer than anyone had expected. Archie showed her some of his artwork, Harry shared updates about their life in California, and, slowly, carefully, some of the wounds between grandmother and grandson began to heal. As the call drew to a close, both sides seemed reluctant to end the connection. The Queen realized that this technology, which she had once viewed with suspicion, had just given her one of the most precious gifts imaginable: time with her great-grandson and a bridge back to her grandson. "Thank you for this wonderful surprise," the Queen said, addressing both Harry and Archie. "This has truly been the most special birthday greeting I could have imagined." Archie, prompted by his father, blew kisses at the screen. "Love you, Gone. I love you too, my precious boy. So very much." As the screen went dark and the connection ended, the Queen sat quietly in the blue drawing room for several minutes. Angela and Lady Susan waited respectfully, recognizing that their monarch needed a moment to process the emotional experience. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady but full of feeling. Sometimes the most important bridges are built by the smallest hands. The impact of that video call would resonate far beyond that afternoon at Windsor Castle, setting in motion changes that no one could have predicted but everyone would eventually recognize as profoundly healing for a family that had seemed irreparably divided. The days following the video call brought an unexpected lightness to Windsor Castle that staff members noticed immediately. The Queen's step seemed more buoyant as she walked through the corridors, and there was a new warmth in her interactions with everyone from senior courtiers to housekeeping staff. Angela Kelly observed that Her Majesty hummed softly while reviewing correspondence, something that hadn't happened in months. 3 days after the call, the Queen made an unusual request that surprised even her longest-serving staff. She asked for a complete technological review of the castle's video communication systems, expressing interest in scheduling regular calls with family members around the world. This was remarkable for someone who had historically preferred traditional forms of communication like handwritten letters and formal telephone conversations. Lady Susan Hussey found the Queen in the morning room, studying a tablet computer with intense concentration. On the screen was a selection of children's books available for digital purchase, each one carefully reviewed for appropriateness and educational value. "Your Majesty, might I ask what has captured your attention so thoroughly?" The Queen looked up with an expression that was both determined and slightly embarrassed. "I'm trying to find books that I might read to Archie during our video calls. I thought perhaps if I could share stories with him, it might help maintain our connection despite the distance." The sight of the Queen navigating modern technology to find ways to bond with her great-grandson touched Lady Susan deeply. Here was a woman who had ruled for 7 decades, who had met with presidents and prime ministers, who had weathered constitutional crises and family scandals, now learning to use an iPad because she wanted to read bedtime stories to a 3-year-old in California.
That's a wonderful idea, Your Majesty.
Perhaps we could also arrange for some books to be sent to Master Archie, so you could read the same stories together.
The Queen's face brightened considerably.
Yes, that's perfect.
Could you please arrange for a selection to be sent?
Include some of the books I read to Charles and when they were young, and perhaps some newer ones as well. As word of the Queen's renewed interest in family connections spread quietly through the palace staff, it created a ripple effect of hope and optimism. Everyone who worked closely with Her Majesty had witnessed her deep sadness over the family divisions, particularly regarding Harry and Meghan's departure. To see her actively working to rebuild those relationships filled them with quiet joy. The Queen's equerry, Colonel Tom Hardy, noticed changes in her official schedule requests as well. She began asking about timing for video calls when planning her weekly engagements, ensuring that she would be available during hours that would work well for California time zones. This consideration for family time was integrated seamlessly into her royal duties, demonstrating how deeply the connection with Archie had affected her priorities. Meanwhile, in Montecito, the impact of the video call was equally profound. Harry found himself calling his father, Prince Charles, for the first time in several months. The conversation was initially awkward, filled with careful politeness and unspoken tensions, but gradually warmed as Harry shared details about Archie's interaction with his great-grandmother. "She cried, Papa," Harry said quietly during their conversation. "I haven't seen Granny cry since Grandpapa's funeral, but Archie's birthday greeting moved her to tears. It reminded me that beneath everything else, she's still our grandmother who loves us unconditionally." Prince Charles, himself moved by this account, felt his own emotions stirring. The relationship between father and son had been strained for so long that moments of genuine connection felt precious and fragile. "Your grandmother has missed you all terribly, Harry. She's never said so directly, but those of us close to her have seen how the separation has affected her." This conversation marked the beginning of a gradual thawing in the relationship between Charles and Harry. While they still had significant differences to work through, the shared love for the Queen and concern for family unity provided common ground they hadn't acknowledged in years. Meghan, observing the positive effects of the video call on both Harry and Archie, began researching ways to help her son maintain a connection with his British royal heritage while growing up in America. She ordered books about British history written for children, found educational videos about castles and the monarchy, and even began teaching Archie some British phrases and traditions. Her motivation wasn't political or strategic, but purely maternal. She could see how much joy the connection with his great-grandmother brought to Archie, and she wanted to nurture that relationship despite the geographical and personal obstacles that existed. Archie himself became fascinated with the idea that his Gongon was a real queen who lived in a real castle. He began drawing pictures of crowns and castles, asking endless questions about what queens do all day, and insisting on wearing his smartest clothes whenever they had plans to call Gongon's house. His innocent enthusiasm began healing wounds that adult conversations and formal apologies hadn't been able to address. There's something about a child's pure love that cuts through complexity and gets to the heart of what truly matters. Back at Windsor Castle, the Queen received a package that brought tears to her eyes once again. Harry and Meghan had sent a collection of Archie's artwork, including several drawings specifically created for her after their video call. One drawing showed a stick figure labeled Gongon wearing what appeared to be a crown, standing next to a castle with flags flying from the towers. Another depicted two figures talking through a computer screen, with hearts floating between them. The Queen immediately had the drawings framed and displayed in her private study, where she could see them during her daily correspondence work. Staff members noticed that she would often pause to look at the drawings and smile, her expression softening with grandmother's pride. She also received a handwritten letter from Meghan, carefully worded but unmistakably heartfelt. The letter expressed gratitude for the Queen's warmth toward Archie during the video call and included an invitation for more regular contact. Most significantly, Meghan wrote about her desire for Archie to know his great-grandmother and understand his heritage, regardless of the complicated circumstances surrounding his parents' relationship with the royal family. This letter represented a significant gesture from Meghan, who had remained largely silent in direct communications with the royal family since the couple's departure. Reading it, the Queen felt a complex mixture of emotions: sadness for the misunderstandings that had led to such division, hope for healing, and deep appreciation for Meghan's efforts to maintain family connections for Archie's sake. The Queen's response was swift and personal. Rather than dictating a formal reply to her secretary, she handwrote her own letter, sharing her joy at reconnecting with Archie and expressing her hope for regular video calls. She also extended an open invitation for the family to visit England whenever they felt comfortable doing so, with assurances that such a visit would be private and focused on family time rather than public appearances. As these private communications continued, staff at both Windsor Castle and Buckingham Palace noticed a subtle shift in the official approach to Harry and Meghan. While there were still significant issues to address regarding their public statements and commercial activities, the personal relationship between family members was clearly on a path toward reconciliation. The second video call was scheduled for 2 weeks later, and the anticipation was palpable on both sides of the Atlantic. This time, the Queen was more prepared technologically but even more nervous emotionally. The first call had been a wonderful surprise, but now there were expectations and hopes that felt heavier somehow. Archie had spent days preparing for this second call with his great-grandmother. He had practiced reading a simple book that he wanted to show her, learned a new song, and created a special drawing just for this occasion. His excitement was infectious, and both Harry and Meghan found themselves looking forward to the call with an enthusiasm that surprised them. When the connection was established for the second time, the comfort level was immediately apparent. The initial awkwardness had been replaced by genuine warmth and anticipation. Archie bounced in front of the camera, eager to share everything he had prepared. "Gone, gone. Gone, gone. I made you a new picture." The Queen leaned forward in her chair, her face lighting up with genuine delight. "Oh, wonderful. May I see it, darling?" Archie held up his artwork proudly. This drawing was more elaborate than his previous attempts, showing a tea party with stick figures sitting around a table. "This is you and me having tea in your castle. Papa helped me draw the teacups." The Queen clasped her hands together in genuine pleasure. "That's absolutely beautiful, Archie. I would love to have tea with you in my castle someday. Perhaps we could arrange that." The casual mention of a future visit sent ripples of hope through everyone present. Harry and Meghan exchanged meaningful glances, while the Queen seemed to realize the significance of what she had just suggested. Harry cleared his throat gently. "That would be wonderful, Granny. Archie would love to see the castle in person." "Yes," the Queen replied firmly, her decision clearly made in that moment. "I think that would be very good for all of us." The rest of the call continued with the easy flow that had characterized their first conversation, but now there was an additional element of future planning. They discussed Archie's upcoming 4th birthday, the Queen's upcoming official engagements, and the possibility of more frequent video calls. When Archie showed her his attempt at reading a simple book, the Queen listened with the patience and encouragement that only grandmothers possess. His reading was halting and required help with many words, but her praise was genuine and enthusiastic. "You're doing so well with your reading, Archie. When you come to visit me, I'll show you the library in the castle. There are thousands of books there, some of them very old and special." The promise of sharing the castle library with him sparked Archie's imagination immediately. He began asking questions about the books, whether there were any about dragons or dinosaurs, and if he would be allowed to touch them. The Queen answered each question seriously, treating his curiosity with the same respect she would show to any important visitor to Windsor Castle. This wasn't patronizing behavior toward a child, but genuine recognition of his interests and natural intelligence. As the call concluded, both sides were already planning the next one. The Queen suggested that perhaps they could schedule a regular weekly time that would work for everyone, making these connections a reliable part of their routines rather than special occasions. "I look forward to our calls, Archie. They're the highlight of my week." "Mine too, gone. Next time, can I show you my toy dinosaurs? I would love to see your dinosaurs. I'll tell you what, I'll show you some pictures of the horses here at the castle."
Would you like that? The enthusiasm in Archie's response was all the answer she needed. As the screen went dark ending their second call, the Queen sat back in her chair with a sense of contentment she hadn't felt in a very long time. The bridge between California and Windsor Castle was growing stronger with each conversation, built on the foundation of a little boy's innocent love and a great-grandmother's rediscovered joy in family connections. What had begun as a simple birthday greeting was evolving into something much more significant, the healing of a family and the creation of new traditions that honored both their royal heritage and their human hearts. The weekly video calls between Windsor Castle and Montecito had become a cherished routine that both families protected fiercely. Palace staff learned to schedule around these precious hours, and, in California, Harry and Meghan structured their days to ensure Archie would be well rested and excited for his conversations with Gongon. By the 6th week of regular calls, something remarkable had happened. The formality that had initially characterized even the family interactions had completely dissolved. The Queen found herself laughing freely at Archie's stories about his adventures with the family's rescue chickens, and Archie had become comfortable enough to interrupt his great-grandmother when he had something important to share, which amused her greatly. During one particularly memorable call, Archie had insisted on giving Gongon a virtual tour of his garden, carrying the tablet outside so she could see the vegetables he was learning to grow. The Queen, who had always been passionate about gardens and the outdoors, was delighted to discuss soil conditions and growing seasons with a 3-year-old who showed genuine interest in where food comes from. "The tomatoes aren't red yet, Gongon, but Papa says they will be soon," Archie explained, holding a green tomato close to the camera. "Patience is very important in gardening, darling," the Queen replied. "Good things take time to grow properly. That's true for tomatoes and for many other things in life." Harry, listening to this exchange, felt the weight of his grandmother's words. The healing happening between them was indeed taking time to grow properly, but the progress was undeniable and deeply meaningful. The conversations had also begun including stories about the Queen's own childhood, which fascinated Archie and provided Harry with insights into his grandmother's early life that he had never heard before. She told them about her beloved corgis from decades past, about learning to drive during World War II, and about the mischief she and Princess Margaret had gotten into as children at Windsor Castle. These stories weren't just entertainment for Archie, they were family history being passed down across generations, creating connections that transcended the recent troubles and controversies. Harry found himself taking notes during some calls, wanting to preserve these memories and stories for Archie to have when he grew older. The transformation in the Queen's demeanor was noticed by everyone around her. Prince William, during one of his regular visits to see his grandmother, commented on how much brighter and more energetic she seemed. "These calls with Archie have given her something to look forward to each week," he observed to his wife, Catherine. "I haven't seen her this animated in months." Catherine, who had always been close to the Queen and who missed Harry and his family deeply, felt a complex mixture of happiness and sadness. She was thrilled that healing was taking place, but also acutely aware of how much they had all lost during the separation. "Perhaps this could be the beginning of bringing everyone back together," she suggested hopefully. William, ever the cautious one, was more reserved in his optimism. "I hope so, but there's still a lot of hurt and misunderstanding to work through. At least the children are connecting with their great-grandmother. That's what matters most." Indeed, the calls had expanded to occasionally include William and Catherine's children as well. Cousins Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis had joined some of the video calls, creating a delightful chaos of children competing for Gongon's attention and sharing their various accomplishments and adventures. These multi-child calls were particularly precious to the Queen, who felt she was witnessing the natural bonds forming between cousins despite the geographical distance and family tensions. Archie and his British cousins quickly became comfortable with each other, chattering about their pets, their favorite games, and their different schools. During one such call, Princess Charlotte had proudly shown Archie a drawing she had made of their family, which included stick figures representing Harry, Meghan, and Archie alongside the rest of the family. The innocence of her inclusive representation brought tears to many adult eyes watching the exchange. "That's beautiful, Charlotte," the Queen had said. "I think that picture shows exactly how families should be, everyone included and everyone loved." The impact of these words resonated far beyond the video call. Both Harry and William, listening to their grandmother's gentle but clear message about family inclusion, felt the weight of responsibility to work toward healing for the sake of their children. As autumn approached, discussions about a potential visit to England became more serious. The Queen's casual invitation during their second call had evolved into detailed conversations about logistics, timing, and expectations. Harry and Meghan were cautious but increasingly open to the idea, especially seeing how much Archie longed to visit the castle he heard about in every call with his great-grandmother. The Queen had made it clear that any visit would be entirely private, with no official engagements or public appearances required. "I simply want time with my family," she had stated firmly during a conversation with her private secretary. Particularly time with Archie in person. Planning such a visit required delicate coordination between multiple households and security teams, but the Queen's determination made it a priority for everyone involved. She wanted Archie to experience the things he had heard about in their calls: the horses, the gardens, the library, and the simple joy of having tea with his great-grandmother in her actual castle rather than through a computer screen. The breakthrough moment came during a call in early October. Archie had been particularly chatty, sharing details about his upcoming 4th birthday party and expressing disappointment that Gongon couldn't be there in person. "I wish you could come to my birthday party, Gongon," he said with the directness that only young children possess. The Queen's heart ached at his innocent wish. "Oh, darling, I wish I could too. But, perhaps you could come visit me for a late birthday celebration? Would you like that?" Archie's face lit up with excitement. "Really? I could really come to your castle?" "Yes, really. If your mama and papa agree, I would love to have you visit. We could have a special birthday tea party, just for you." The excitement in Archie's voice was infectious as he turned to his parents off-camera. "Mama. Papa. Gongon says I can come to her castle for a birthday party." Harry and Meghan exchanged a look that combined hope, nervousness, and determination. This was the moment they had been building toward through weeks of healing conversations. "We would love to come visit, Granny," Harry said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's time." The Queen's smile was radiant. "Wonderful. Let's make it happen." The weeks that followed were filled with careful planning and growing excitement. The Queen personally oversaw arrangements for their visit, ensuring that Archie's room would be decorated with themes he enjoyed and that activities would be planned around his interests and energy levels. She ordered new books for the library visit she had promised him, arranged for the stables to have gentle horses available for him to meet, and even had the kitchen staff prepare to make birthday treats that would appeal to a 4-year-old's tastes. Every detail was considered through the lens of making Archie's visit magical and memorable. The impact on palace staff was remarkable. There was a sense of anticipation and joy that hadn't been felt at Windsor Castle in years. Everyone from the head housekeeper to the garden staff found themselves contributing ideas for making young Archie's visit special. The castle, which had felt somewhat melancholy since Prince Philip's death, was being prepared to welcome new life and laughter. Meanwhile, in California, Archie was practically vibrating with excitement. He had begun sleeping with a book about castles under his pillow and insisted on practicing his royal manners for meeting his great-grandmother in person. Harry and Meghan watched their son's enthusiasm with a mixture of joy and nervousness about returning to England under such emotionally charged circumstances. The video calls during this planning period took on a different character. There was an electricity of anticipation that made everyone more animated and excited. Archie would regularly ask for updates about the visit, wanting to know exactly which rooms he would see and which horses he might meet. The Queen, for her part, seemed years younger as she described the plans she was making for his visit. She told him about the special tea set that had been chosen for their birthday party, about the garden paths she thought he would enjoy exploring, and about the family photographs she wanted to show him. "I have pictures of your papa when he was little, just like you," she told him during one call. "Would you like to see them when you visit?" "Yes." "Was Papa little like me?" "Oh yes, very little. And he got into quite a bit of mischief, just like little boys should." These glimpses into Harry's childhood delighted Archie and provided healing moments for Harry himself.
Hearing his grandmother speak fondly of his childhood, remembering him with love despite their recent difficulties, helped repair some of the hurt he had carried for so long. The date was set for late October, just after Archie's birthday. The visit would last 4 days, providing time for both intimate family moments and the practical business of rebuilding relationships that had been strained for so long. As the departure date approached, the weekly video calls became daily check-ins. Archie's excitement was boundless, and the Queen found herself sharing in his anticipation with an enthusiasm that surprised even herself. During their final video call before the trip, Archie pressed his face close to the camera and whispered conspiratorially, "Gon, I can't wait to give you a real hug." The Queen's eyes filled with tears at his sweet words. "Oh, my precious boy, I can't wait for that hug either. It's going to be the very best hug in the world." As the call ended and preparations for their journey began in earnest, both families felt the weight of hope and possibility. What had started as a simple birthday greeting from a little boy to his great-grandmother had grown into something much more profound, the healing of a family and the promise of a new chapter in their shared story. The stage was set for a reunion that would touch hearts around the world and demonstrate the power of unconditional love to bridge even the widest divides. The morning of Harry, Meghan, and Archie's arrival at Windsor Castle dawned crisp and bright, with autumn sunlight filtering through the ancient trees and casting golden shadows across the castle grounds. The Queen had been awake since before sunrise, unable to contain her excitement and nervousness about seeing her great-grandson in person for the first time in over 2 years. She stood at the window of her private apartments, watching as the staff made final preparations for their guest's arrival. The sight of gardeners placing fresh flowers along the entrance path and security personnel conducting their discreet final checks filled her with a mixture of joy and apprehension that she hadn't felt in decades. Angela Kelly found her there at 8 o'clock, already dressed in a cheerful blue coat and her favorite pearl necklace, ready hours before the scheduled arrival time. "Your Majesty, you look lovely this morning. Though perhaps you might want some breakfast before our guests arrive?" The Queen turned from the window with a smile that made her appear decades younger. "I'm far too excited to eat, Angela. I feel rather like a child on Christmas morning, if I'm being honest." This admission of vulnerable excitement from someone who had spent 70 years mastering public composure touched Angela deeply. She had served the Queen through countless momentous occasions, state visits, constitutional crises, family celebrations and tragedies, but had never seen her quite this personally invested in a family reunion. At Heathrow Airport, Harry, Meghan, and Archie were experiencing their own mixture of emotions as they prepared for the journey to Windsor. Archie, who had slept fitfully during the long flight from California, was now wide awake and bouncing with anticipation. "Are we really going to see Gongon's castle now, Papa?" he asked for perhaps the 20th time that morning. "Yes, buddy, we really are. And Gongon is so excited to see you," Harry replied, his own voice betraying the emotional weight of returning to England under these circumstances. Meghan squeezed Harry's hand as they settled into the car that would take them to Windsor. "He's been talking about nothing but this visit for weeks. I think it's going to be magical for all of them." The drive through the English countryside provided a peaceful transition from the bustling airport to the grandeur that awaited them at Windsor Castle. Archie pressed his face to the window, marveling at the rolling green hills and traditional buildings that looked so different from his familiar California landscape. As they approached the castle gates, even Archie fell silent, awed by the massive stone walls and towering flags flying in the afternoon breeze. "It's really, really big, Papa," he whispered, his eyes wide with wonder. Inside the castle, the Queen had positioned herself in the grand reception room, where she could see the main courtyard through the tall windows. When the car appeared in the distance, her heart began racing with an excitement she hadn't felt since her own children were young. Lady Susan Hussey stood nearby, ready to provide support if needed, but observing with deep affection the transformation in her monarch's demeanor. The weight of recent years seemed to have lifted from the Queen's shoulders, replaced by the bright anticipation of a grandmother about to be reunited with her family. As the car pulled to a stop, the Queen moved toward the entrance hall, her steps quicker than usual. Protocol suggested she should wait in the reception room for her guests to be formally announced, but protocol seemed less important than the urgent need to embrace her great-grandson. Harry stepped out of the car first, looking around the familiar courtyard with a complex mixture of nostalgia and emotion. This had been his home for so much of his childhood, filled with memories both wonderful and painful.
Meghan emerged next, taking in the grandeur of the ancient castle with appropriate awe and respect.
Then, Archie appeared, and, suddenly, nothing else mattered. The little boy who had charmed his great-grandmother through computer screens was here in person, looking around with wonder at the massive stone walls and uniformed guards that surrounded him. "Wow," he breathed, his voice small in the vastness of the courtyard.
Gangan's house is really big."
As the family was escorted into the castle, Archie's steps grew smaller and more hesitant. The grandeur that had excited him in stories and pictures was overwhelming in reality. The corridors seemed endless, filled with portraits of stern-looking people in elaborate frames, and everything echoed with the weight of centuries of history. Harry noticed his son's nervousness and knelt down to his level.
"It's okay, buddy.
Gangan is waiting for us, and she's so happy you're here." At that moment, the Queen appeared around the corner, having abandoned all pretense of formal protocol. When she saw Archie clinging shyly to his father's hand, her heart melted completely. "Archie, my darling boy," she said softly, kneeling down to his height despite her 96 years.
"You're really here."
For a moment, neither of them moved. Archie stared at his great-grandmother, this legendary figure he had only known through video calls, while the Queen simply drank in the sight of him in person, taller than she had realized, with Harry's distinctive red hair catching the light and eyes that sparkled with intelligence and curiosity. Then, with the sudden decisiveness that only children possess, Archie broke into a huge smile and ran directly into the Queen's arms. "Gangan," he exclaimed, and the Queen gathered him close, tears streaming down her face as she held her great-grandson for the first time in over 2 years. "Oh, my precious, precious boy," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion.
"How I've missed you."
Harry and Meghan watched this reunion with their own tears, seeing the pure love and connection that transcended all the complications and conflicts that had kept the family apart. In this moment, there was only a great-grandmother and her beloved great-grandson, finally, together. When they finally separated, Archie looked up at the Queen with curiosity rather than shyness.
"You're really real, Gangan.
And you really live in this big castle?" The Queen laughed through her tears.
"I am really real, and this really is my home. Would you like me to show you around?"
The tour that followed was unlike any official castle tour in history. The Queen, one of the most protocol-conscious people in the world, delighted in showing Archie everything through his eyes. They explored the library, where he marveled at books that were older than his country. They visited the stables, where he met gentle horses and learned about the Queen's lifelong love of riding. In the famous Long Walk Gardens, Archie ran ahead of the adults, his laughter echoing off the ancient walls as he chased butterflies and examined flowers with the enthusiasm only a 4-year-old could muster.
The Queen kept pace as best she could, unwilling to miss a moment of his wonder and joy.
"These gardens have been here for hundreds of years, Archie," she explained as they walked among the carefully maintained flower beds. "Kings and queens have walked on these same paths for longer than anyone can remember."
"Did my papa walk here when he was little like me?"
Archie asked, picking up a fallen leaf and examining it closely.
"Oh yes, he did.
He and Uncle William spent many happy hours running around these gardens, sometimes getting into quite a bit of trouble." The Queen's eyes twinkled as she shared this memory, and Harry felt another piece of his heart heal. The promised tea party took place in the Queen's private dining room, a more intimate space than the grand staterooms. The table had been set with a child-sized chair for Archie and decorated with flowers from the castle gardens. The birthday cake, though belated, was magnificent, decorated with castle turrets and tiny horses, created specifically for a little boy who loved both. As they sat around the table, sharing cake and telling stories, the formality that had once characterized royal gatherings disappeared completely. Archie regaled his great-grandmother with detailed accounts of his chickens back home, while she told him about the corgis who had once ruled these same corridors.
"Gangan, do you get lonely in this big castle?"
Archie asked with the directness that only children possess.
The question struck the Queen unexpectedly.
She paused, considering her answer carefully, aware that honesty was important with children, even when it revealed vulnerability. "Sometimes I do get a bit lonely, darling. That's why these video calls with you have meant so much to me.
And why having you here today makes me so very happy."
Archie considered this seriously, then climbed down from his chair and went to give his great-grandmother another hug.
I don't want you to be lonely, Gon. Can we call you more often?
I would love that more than anything, the Queen replied, holding him close. As the afternoon progressed into evening, Harry and the Queen found themselves with a few moments alone while Meghan helped Archie wash up before dinner. They sat in comfortable chairs by the fire in the Queen's private sitting room, surrounded by family photographs and personal mementos that made the space feel warm and lived in rather than formal.
Granny, Harry began, his voice emotional but determined. I want you to know how sorry I am for everything that's happened. For the distance, for the hurt, for keeping Archie away from you. The Queen held up a gentle hand to stop him. Harry, my dear boy, families sometimes go through difficult periods. What matters is that we find our way back to each other. And, watching you with Archie today, seeing what a wonderful father you've become, fills me with such pride. Harry felt tears threatening again. I've missed you so much. I've missed this, being family without all the complications and expectations. I've missed you too, more than I can express. But, today has shown me that love doesn't diminish with distance or time. It just waits patiently for the right moment to flourish again. Their conversation was interrupted by Archie running back into the room, freshly washed and wearing pajamas decorated with dinosaurs. Gon, can you read me a bedtime story? I would be honored to read you a bedtime story, darling. Shall we choose a book from the library? The bedtime story took place in a guest bedroom that had been specially prepared for Archie's stay. The Queen sat on the edge of his bed, reading from a book that had once belonged to Prince Charles when he was Archie's age. Her voice was gentle and soothing as she brought the characters to life, occasionally pausing to answer Archie's questions or explain unfamiliar words. As the story concluded and Archie's eyes grew heavy with sleep, he reached up to touch the Queen's face gently. I love you, Gon. Thank you for inviting me to your castle. I love you too, my precious boy. Sweet dreams. As the Queen quietly left the room, she found Harry and Meghan waiting in the corridor. Without words, the three of them shared an embrace that represented healing, forgiveness, and hope for the future. Over the remaining days of their visit, the bonds between family members continued to strengthen. William and Catherine visited with their children, creating precious memories of cousins playing together in the same rooms where their fathers had played decades earlier. Prince Charles joined them for lunch, his relationship with his younger son slowly mending through shared focus on family healing. The final morning of their visit dawned gray and misty, reflecting the mixed emotions everyone felt about the approaching farewell. Archie had adapted to castle life with remarkable ease, charming staff members throughout the building and treating his great-grandmother with a comfortable affection that delighted everyone who witnessed it. As they prepared to leave, Archie presented the Queen with a special drawing he had created during their stay, a picture of the two of them having tea together, with I love Gon written in careful 4-year-old letters across the top. This is the most beautiful artwork I have ever received, the Queen told him solemnly. I shall treasure it always. Their final goodbye was emotional but not heartbroken, because all of them now understood that this was not an ending but a new beginning. The video calls would continue, the connection had been re-established, and future visits were already being planned. As their car pulled away from Windsor Castle, Archie waved enthusiastically from the back window until the building disappeared from sight. The Queen stood at her window, waving back until long after the car had gone, her heart fuller than it had been in years. Later that evening, as she sat in her private study surrounded by Archie's artwork and photographs from their visit, the Queen reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this moment. A simple birthday greeting from a 3-year-old had grown into something that healed a family and demonstrated the enduring power of love to overcome any obstacle. The weekly video calls resumed the following week, but now they carried the weight and warmth of shared memories and the promise of future reunions. What had begun as digital connection had blossomed into authentic relationship, proving that the strongest bridges are built not with grand gestures but with consistent love, patience, and the innocent wisdom of children who see hearts rather than headlines. In years to come, historians might analyze the complex factors that contributed to the healing of this particular royal family rift. But those who witnessed it firsthand knew the truth. Sometimes the most powerful diplomacy is conducted by a little boy who simply wants to tell his great-grandmother that he loves her, and
by a great-grandmother who had the wisdom to listen with her heart rather than her head. The Queen's legacy would include many remarkable achievements, but perhaps none more meaningful than the love she shared across an ocean with a little boy who called her Gongon and reminded her that being a grandmother was the most important role she would ever play.